Your Royal Highness, my Lord, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to three current presenting scholars telling us a bit about their Global Focus Program. The Global Focus Program is intensive, 6 weeks of travel in addition to the scholarship, aimed at developing scholars' understanding of global agriculture. It provides them with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet with progressive businesses, organizations and government from across the world, together with other scholars as a group of 8 or 10 from all Nuffield countries. The three scholars who will give us a joint presentation are Jenna Ross, who will also present later this afternoon. She's been traveling the world in the pursuit of slugs. Jonathan Gill is coming back on, our drone geek, and Tom Ormesher, who will also talk later. He's going to tell us about all things to do with water. Can I ask you to come up, please, and make your presentation? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, and of course Nuffield scholars. My name is Jonathan Gill. I did the Chilean GFP, involving me traveling to Italy, down to Texas, up into Washington, D.C., Canada, down to Argentina, and then finally down into Chile.
My name is Jenna Ross, and I went on the Africa GFP, and I traveled across the US, over to the Czech Republic, the Ukraine, into Kenya, and finished off in South Africa.
And I'm the other one, Tom Ormesher. So we started off in Singapore, went up to the Philippines, then over to Japan, then Israel, the Netherlands, and then over to the East Coast, Washington, D.C., and North Carolina. Okay, so what's the GFP? Well, it's an intensive foundation experience into giving you a really broad and deep understanding of the food and farming sector. And this, just gives you so many facets of what the sector does in over many different countries. So it's a 6-week study tour of 3 different continents. You're traveling in groups of approximately 10. So here's my co-scholars in the background there. There's 5 Australians, 1 Brazilian, 1 guy from the Netherlands, and 1 guy from Ireland who happens to be in the audience today. There he is. Yeah, it's great to see you, Carol. So it gives you a whole understanding of the food farming supply chain in a global context and unparalleled access to all sorts of different elements of it.
So who does the GFP? So most Nuffield organisations have made it compulsory to do the GFP. And in the UK, only a select few get the opportunity to actually do it. And what we're here to actually say is, should the GFP be open to all UK scholars? So, my personal impact. Okay, this is me travelling over to Chile, having a Chilean apple. It's great to see where it physically came from instead of it just coming from the supermarket shelf, and understanding where that entire supply chain came from. The increased knowledge of different sectors and understanding the challenges and opportunities around the world has been invaluable for my capabilities to understand the world. The GFP taught me one major thing, is it told me things about agriculture that I didn't think I needed to know, but are so incredibly important towards everything of agriculture. And unless I had that experience, I wouldn't be the rounded person that I am today. Just like an apple. It's a massive personal development scholarship.
Yeah, and just really to echo that, the GFP throws things at you that you just didn't know were things until they're confronted to you. And in contrast to your personal study, where you're looking at quite a narrow field and going out with a particular idea about seeing something, this is throwing everything at you in the kitchen sink. And really, so you've got this unparalleled access, looking at the best farmers right the way through the supply chain, through to senior government officials. And this guy, the Agricultural Commissioner Troxler from North Carolina, gave me time to stop and think, just for some reason. So I work for the National Farmers Union. I spend my time advocating the interests of farmers and growers at a local level. So I think about policy and I think about the interests of farmers and the shape of the industry. And this guy, so he's an elected official, and his mission is to develop new markets, preserving working farms and protecting food supply. And so he has 800 staff underneath him, from agronomy to engineering to farm advisors, all providing farming advice to farmers free at the point of delivery. That's an awkward phrase, I guess. No. And so really the point being that, you know, wouldn't it be great if we had that kind of level of advocacy and representation in the UK? And it just gives you a thought about what you can do in this industry. I'll go on to the next one. Yeah, and it's just an education in the art of the possible. So the average age of a farmer in Japan is actually 67 years old. So it gives you a real sense, and they're streets ahead in thinking about what you're going to do about the next generation and what you're going to do about career development in the industry. So everything from kind of profiling youth leadership to innovative farm ownership models. So this guy, Yuichiro, he's just turned 30 and he's the managing director of this tomato growing business. And they've got this innovative kind of model of him developing progressive ownership in the business. Also things like developing careers for young people around the farm in really rural areas. So we visited this sweet potato packing and processing business, but you go there and it's really high tech in terms of having kind of product development, marketing jobs that, in a really rural area. So they had kind of 30, 40 staff doing these kind of, you know, quite tech savvy jobs. And it's just about having younger people around the farming business, which I thought was a really interesting thing to think about. And then, I mean, they were also doing things like matchmaking farmers. So if you're a young person in a really rural area, they were going to the city and trying to find you a wife. And, you know, apart from the matchmaking, I think we've got a lot to learn from these kind of approaches. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people ask, what is the impact of doing the GFP? And obviously, Jonathan and Tom have spoken about the personal impact and the professional impact. But I'm here today to speak about the impact in industry, the return on investment. I'm going to start with next generation. So when I was traveling in Kenya, we went to visit the Christopher Kiamba Memorial School, and there I met these very inspirational young ladies who had aspirations of being doctors and lawyers. And they were fascinated to meet 9 international Nuffield farming scholars working in agriculture. Because to them, they saw agriculture as low-tech, slow-moving, and something that was very low-skilled that their grandparents did, something that they were moving desperately away from. So the idea to meet scholars like ourselves, and someone like myself who has a PhD and an MBA, that I was working in agriculture. And it got them thinking, well, wow, you know, there's so many careers in agriculture. It's not just farming, it is also science, it's technology, and as Jonathan's demonstrated, it's also a level of engineering. And it brought that back with me after the GFP, and it got me thinking of, I want to make a difference. I want to engage more with the next generation. So back in October, I was involved in the Farmers Weekly Agricultural Pavilion as part of the New Scientist Live event. And that was really showcasing the technology, you know, demonstrating the level of technology that we have in agriculture right now as we're approaching that 4th agricultural revolution, and demonstrating the breadth of career opportunities to the next generation. One of the other big impacts for me is about new discoveries. So as we were traveling around on the GFP, I got a great exposure to the level of challenges and opportunities in global agriculture. And that's from smallholder farmers in Africa to large-scale producers in the Ukraine. And with that, when I got back from the GFP, it got me to thinking, well, I've learned so much. So before doing the GFP, I am a scientist. I have a passion for slugs, which we'll find out this afternoon. And it got me thinking, well, I want to do more. And so I took on a position at Crop Health and Protection, which is one of the new government agri-tech centres, as innovation lead. And my role now is to look at driving innovative solutions for the sector. And one of those solutions has come out of my GFP. During the travel, we went to visit Kasima Farm in Kenya, and they produce flowers, they're involved in arable production, forestry, and they're also big producers of potato. And potato, it's the 2nd largest crop in Kenya. Roughly 800,000 people are involved in potato production in Kenya, but it faces major challenges, and one of those challenges is potato cyst nematode. It's become extremely widespread throughout Kenya. So in order for farmers to detect if they have potato cyst nematode, they have to send in soil samples for analysis, but the Kenyan laboratories don't have capacity to analyse these samples. And if you're a smallholder farmer in Kenya, you don't have the financial means to pay for this analysis. So this was the birth of this project, the idea of developing a diagnostic tool that's quick, easy, and cost-effective, that should cost a farmer approximately £2 to £3 per sample, compared to £40 as it stands right now. So back in July, we found out that we'd won this funding through Innovate UK, and I had the honour last week, of being out in Kenya, launching this project along with a Kenyan research organisation called ISIPI, along with a UK organisation called PES Technologies, who had developed a new sensor based on biological activity within soil, so looking at the volatiles that are released from soil. And the idea is to adapt this sensor for potato cyst nematode. And not only will this have an impact on smallholder farmers in Africa, the idea is to roll this out globally. So beyond just the research we've been doing, when I came back from the GFP, I also wanted to make a conscious effort of writing up people that I met, the experiences that I had, so that I could showcase to the industry what the GFP is about. So I wrote up each section of my GFP. I've also been involved in disseminating my experiences through industry events such as this.
Okay, the main key messages. So, traveling around the world allowed me to understand so many different things that I didn't know about agriculture. And it was really humbling from going to all the different countries that I'd actually been to, that I was able to actually come back to the UK, start kind of processing the massive amount of information that I'd learned everywhere, and then start being able to do something with it. Now, I'm really lucky. I work at a university, and I'm really happy to host many people to actually come and see. And behind me are a number of photographs of people who I met on my GFP and who came back to see the kind of technologies that I was working with, so they too could learn and understand. So I've got a group based down in the Hands-Free Hectare who actually travelled all the way from Australia to actually come and see me. In cereals, when I was demonstrating probably the most stressful thing of my life, a combine harvester harvesting a field in front of everybody who wanted to try and jump inside it, was an amazing experience, but I had 5 different groups travelling all around the world who'd actually made the time to come and speak to me and understand the technologies behind. And I was able to understand them at the same level because I'd been to Texas. I was able to understand rice growing. I was able to understand the differences between India and Argentina and all the different types of places in between, and also share my experience with New Zealand talking about spray drone technology that was able to actually work.
And my key message, I'm taking my inspiration from 2017 Netherlands scholar Jacco de Groot. So when we were in the Netherlands, on our very last day there, we went along to his event. And essentially, he also did the same GFP as me. He did the Japan GFP. And in the Netherlands, they don't have to write a report. They don't have to do a conference. They're just given just a general expectation that you'll do something to further the knowledge that you've gained in the industry. So what Jacco did is he held a party on his farm, which I thought was great, you know. So at this farm, he invited equal numbers of public officials, people from the local area, so just members of the public, as well as lots of farmers. And at the party, he did a workshop where he split everybody up into kind of equally balanced groups. And in those groups, he was asking people about how to develop his Nuffield scholarship, how to make the industry more sustainable. And through this kind of soft lobbying exercise, he was able to introduce his messages to quite a wide number of people. And I just thought this was great. You know, this is kind of the spirit of Nuffield right here, about kind of bringing your learning home and actually manifesting it in your local area. And, so in terms of making a difference, I took a lot from this, and it's really influenced my personal study as well.
And my key messages, first of all, has been about attracting the next generation into agriculture, which I've already mentioned. It's also about understanding the key challenges facing agriculture and looking at the innovative solutions that we can employ to address these issues. It's about turning a problem into a solution. And the reason there's Indian runner ducks in this slide is, as a GFP group, we went to visit a vineyard in South Africa. And it had been bought over by an investment firm. It wasn't great wine, and they had a big slug and snail problem, which was perfect for me. And they decided they didn't want to use chemical control. They wanted to use a more cultural approach, so employing Indian runner ducks. And they suddenly realized, well, actually, there's money to be made in this. We could start charging people to come and see the Indian runner ducks be herded around. And they completely changed their business model and started charging, and actually now are extremely successful because of this. And now the whole brand of their wine is around the Indian runner duck. And my final point there is the importance of biosecurity. While in Kenya, I found myself on a farm that had foot and mouth, and it got me to thinking, how easy would it be for me to bring foot and mouth back to the UK, back to Aberdeenshire? My dad would love me. But we are so lax in the UK when it comes to biosecurity, and this has definitely spilled on into my own personal study. And since coming back, I've since taken on a blog opportunity with Cabby, speaking about invasions and looking at how we can avoid biological invasions. And again, I'm going to speak a little bit more about this in the afternoon in my own personal presentation. So I think, in conclusion, I think it's safe to say that Tom, Jonathan, and myself have each been impacted, both on a personal level and a professional level. But I think we've also shown a great return on investment from our GFP. And if you can get all of that from the three of us, can you imagine if each UK scholar did a GFP, we'd see this right across. And this could actually change everything. Thank you very much.